Hey, well, welcome everyone as you're joining in and we get settled into this dynamic discussion with our folks at the Ecology Center. This is part of the Regenerative Organic Learning Center program that the Regenerative Organic Alliance has started this year. And up on the screen right now is just some general participation guidelines for this webinar. If you all can keep yourself muted during the main part of the webinar, we will later be you'll have a chance to unmute yourself and ask and engage in the discussion. This webinar is about an hour. We're going to go we allocated more time to allow for more discussion and whatnot, but we are going to make this also available for as a recording for later. So that'll be fun, and we're super excited to have folks here. If you can have your video on or off. Love to see your faces. And if you want to put in the chat where you're coming from, where you're residing, and also what is your role in this movement? Are you a farmer? Are you a producer? Are you just a general public interested in this? So just under your name, where you're coming from, and what role you're playing as we transform this food system. And as people start coming in, I just want to acknowledge the folks that are presenting here. We have Alanya, who's with Regenerative Organic Alliance. She's our main supporter of operations here. And if you send an email to info@regenorganic.org, this is the person that's going to receive it. And then we have Elizabeth Whitlow, who is our executive director of the Regenerative Organic Alliance, and also Haley, who helps with all communications, so all the social media posts and whatnot. This is the wonderful person behind all that. And then today we have Evan Marks and Johnny Wilson coming in first. And we also have Jonathan from the Ecology Center, which is one of our learning centers. And that's the main focus of today. We're going to be listening and hearing how the Ecology Center has adapted and adjusted, promoted, and been a model of production and community. Very holistic approach to community and food, and this is a farmer somewhat focused program in the sense that we're here to listen and understand how regenerative organic is applicable to this bioregion, to this site. And so Johnny Wilson is the main farmer there, and he'll be sharing with us some of the tools and techniques and ways in which they implement this. And so is there anything I missed there, Elizabeth? Do you want to add anything to the intro?
No, I think that's perfect. I'm just excited to hear from Evan and Johnny. Big shout out of appreciation to our friends down there at the Ecology Center and all the work they've been doing to drive change in our agricultural system for their community. It's really exciting to get to spotlight on you all and the good work you're doing. And I love to see all the different people who are chiming in on the chat. So folks, please keep saying hi, where you're from. I see we've got people from all over the world, not just the country. So this probably isn't kind of the local farmers that we're going to hope to get to the field day when we get down to your place in a few weeks, guys. But it lets you see some of the interest that we're fielding here at the ROA, which has just been tremendous. Like the growth, the interest, the passion that I have been so privileged to see, to witness in the last 6 years is really just fills my heart. So thanks y'all for coming. And thank you, Benjamin, for your amazing facilitation. We had our first field day last week. You might be talking about that a little bit, Benjamin.
Yeah.
We were in Valley. It was really cool.
Yeah, I was just going to take a few minutes to kind of give a little bit of context, and then I'll be turning it over to you, Evan, to kind of give us a intro to the Ecology Center and kind of the approach you all are taking down there. And then we'll go to Johnny, Elizabeth, and then to Jonathan.
And then Jonathan, I see, is here now. Yep, I didn't see you earlier. Hi, Jonathan. Hi, JP.
Yes. So also in the chat, folks, as we go through this, if you have questions, and whether it's related to this or to ROA, because we're going to be talking about a lot of different topics, feel free to put them in the chat, and at the end, we'll dedicate time to answer those questions. So don't be shy. And my name is Benjamin Farr. I was brought on to help manage this program, which is setting up learning centers around the country. There's Elizabeth has been with ROA since its inception, and came up with this concept of how do we educate and share the ways in which farms are implementing regenerative organic practices, and then those being a resource and a hub for other farms in the area. And so with this, with setting up these learning centers, we have one in 5 different bioregions around the country. We had our first field day last week up at Breathe Deep Farm, or the barn at Miller's Crossing there with Chris Casson and that team. And they you can find out more information on the website, but it was a very dynamic day. He's doing about 600 acres in grains, also has a 70-acre CSA, 500-member CSA vegetable farm, certified organic, and then the grains certified regenerative organic. And we had talk about the ways in which the certification happens, the practices that are implemented at that scale, and kind of the challenges that we have in transitioning towards a more regenerative system from a farming standpoint as we move there. We're in a very dynamic time right now, climatically and socially. Most of us, when we were there, the hurricane was hitting. We had the farmer from Gaia Herbs was there kind of on the phone because the farm was flooded. Right now, Alania's up in Sonoma and a fire just broke out up the hill. You might have to bounce off of this call. And I'm sure people on this call, whether it's close or relatively close, or someone you know is probably affected by some of these challenges that we face climatically, but also socially. We're in a very, whenever you're going to be listening to this, we're recording this in October 3rd of 2024. It is 2024. And there's a lot going on in the world. So whenever you're listening to this, we'll see what sense we've made of it all. But one crucial part is we all eat. We all eat. And we all need to be eating good, healthy, clean food. And so part of things being certified, regenerative, and organic is that we're looking at regenerative practices, tools, and techniques that the farmer can implement for healthy soil, because we all know that soil health is human health. And then the organic inputs, regenerative organic, we're looking at the inputs being that which is certified organic, so we know that we're not spraying any harmful elements or non-organic elements into the environment. And there's a lot of discussion about certification and farmers being rebellious and which I know very much so, and wanting to do their own thing and sometimes being averse to certification. And I'm hoping that in today's conversation, we can show the value of what that means to be certified and the accountability, responsibility as a certified regenerative organic farm. So that's kind of our desired outcome and hope. I'll be leading the discussion, probably interjecting with some different questions that might come up. But I will introduce now to Evan Marks, who is the Executive Director at the Ecology Center, who's going to be chiming in here and sharing with us. Yeah. Oh, and you got the cool thing. And if you do different gestures, you can also put the hearts and stuff. Or I guess that's hearts, just putting hearts. Yeah, so that's great. So Evan, thank you for joining us. And yeah, if you want to go ahead and give us a intro to everything you guys are doing down there, and really the value of what Regenerative Organic Certified adds to your guys' operation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks, Ben. Thanks, Elizabeth and team, for having us. You kind of paint the picture of what's happening here at the Ecology Center. We have a background that's grounded in the agroecology movement from Santa Cruz, with the inception of the farm and garden and kind of the legacy that Alan Chadwick built in the mid-60s. And so we're direct descendants of that and have worked through various different farmers and philosophers in that realm. And we then, after traveling the world and putting these ideas to work, ended up back in Orange County. Orange County is in where we're located in San Juan Capistrano, is between Los Angeles and San Diego. And so we're in a fairly arid environment. We're about 1.5 miles from the ocean. So it's this incredible watershed that we're in, this alluvial floodplain of the San Juan Creek watershed. The soils here are incredibly fertile. It's a thick clay loam. So it's what they make the adobe missions and the adobe homes. This was the prominent architecture pre-colonial, was all from the earth, and incredible building materials and incredibly fertile land, rich culture and rich history here. Agriculture's been, we've inherited a farm, stewarding a farm that the city bought and protected. It's 28 acres in a fairly dense environment. Again, it's in Orange County and we're 1.5 miles from the beach, so it's coveted land and it's very incredible farmland. The city bought this land and protected it in 1990 from development. So they bought 60 acres. They took half of it and put it towards like a community center and various other uses, and they left half into the farm. So the farm has been in stewardship for 140 years. So it's quite a legacy here that we're helping manifest towards the next 140 years. The way that the farm was moving was a very industrial organic operation. So you guys are literate in the agricultural spectrum of production and methodology, but this one was pull the poisons off, but keep the industrial processes, rectilinear orientation to the fence lines, maximize production, grow a couple ingredients, compete with wholesale producers, and race to the bottom. And that was no longer viable here in this geography due to the cost of water, the cost of just growing ingredients at large between labor, water, everything else, and trying to compete with international producers. And so what was needed was ultimately a model and a methodology that was more akin to where we have come from, which is a direct community orientation. So we grow, so before I talk about what we grow, so that was sort of like the way to sustain this legacy operation was to build community that connected to it, which is for many of you guys maybe obvious, maybe not, but for us, that's a pretty critical piece to the health of our family farmer, is having that deep relationship to their community, such that we can then just find the economic means for the ecology. And it's the only way that we've found that way which is to sell premium ingredients direct to those that would respect them, so that we can then lift the ecology and lift the equity. And so in the orientation of this farm, and again, we're not just a farm center, like farming is the heart and it's the canvas, but it's really the tool that we use in all of our programming, which I can describe briefly, but it's really as the lens for how we come closer back and reconnect to the health and harmony with planet Earth. It's how we come back together as a species to live in a way that serves all of our individual pursuits, but more importantly, the collective pursuit of leaving it better than we found it and living a healthy, happy life. And so how that manifests outside of just the regenerative organic farm, and like I said, direct to community engagement, is that we have a gorgeous farm stand that celebrates the agrarian culture of our bioregion. So about 75% of those ingredients are ours, but we also help support other farmers that grow ingredients that are complementary yet different than ours.
Artisanal producers.
And various other artisan producers and makers. We have
artisan producers. You guys would say you're an artisan producer, right? Of this amazing food.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Evan, one thing I want to make sure you come back to is just what you mentioned about the farm-centric aspect of, you have all this amazing programming, and yet the farm is kind of the hub of which everything stems from, right? It's like a farm-centric site, which is really beautiful with production. So Johnny, you can in a minute talk about that production component, because it's not just a gesture towards a farm that feels good. It's, you guys are really producing some amazing dish.
And on that note, Benjamin, we feel very passionate about that the farm stands on its own, and it drives impact in all of the other departments. There's an educational department. I'll just scan briefly, where there's children here every day, where their primary education happens here, after school programs, field trips, you name it, workshops. We have a culinary department where their ingredients come from the farm, with a cafe, and then fine dining chefs come and visit and experience our ingredients on the farm. We do all sorts of seasonal festivals and community events, but at the end of the day, the farm, and let's go back to the farm, like you said, because that's the heart of the conversation here. Johnny and I, we've been in this together for over 20 years. And we really believe that the farm, part of the proof of concept here is that the farm is a viable enterprise, that the ecology and the equity can sustain itself. And it's taken us a few years of investment, where we were able, as a nonprofit, to leverage philanthropy to help us with some of these startup costs. But we are very, very happy to report on some incredible evolutions. We're 5 years into this model at the 28-acre scale, which, you know, we've almost outgrown with the demand. And so we're very excited about where this can go. Our big vision, of course, to put the culture back in the agriculture and the agriculture back in the community here, and really take back the county, which was once an agrarian place. And so we'll see how far we can get in our lifetime. And we're young, so we got a little bit of time here. But the farm this year is net positive from a financial standpoint, and the most ecologically and healthy environment I've yet to seen. And I don't want to steal Johnny's thunder, but this where we're at with in conversation to the strawberries, which I'll let him speak more to. But it's one of those things where it just brings me such gratitude for staying the course. You know, my mentor unlocked the methodologies for growing organic strawberries in the 80s in Santa Cruz, Steve Gleasman. And so we've come a long way. And of course, you know, I look at strawberries, I also like corn as an analogy where you've got the best of the worst. But you could look at strawberries as a great analogy. And I don't know if you want me to, can I go down that road?
For sure.
Okay.
You go down that road because those strawberries are off the hook. I mean, they're really, you guys have done an amazing job.
Yeah, I could go down a lot of different roads, but this one's really, we're lining the train up for planting strawberries in 2 weeks. So it's like, it's top of mind. And when you walk out to our strawberry fields, to paint the picture, you know, we went from this one big rectilinear farm that was covered in plastic mulch growing some wholesale ingredients. And now it's this crazy ecosystem. And the strawberry fields, it's a 4-year rotation. So we're coming to this 5th year of this strawberry planting. And let me just paint the picture. It's 3.5 acres. There's 4 fields that are you know, a little over a half acre that are flanked with stone fruit that are fully producing
citrus as well. You got citrus lined in there.
This field specifically, we're in the stone field.
Oh yeah,
because it was a strawberry rotation, but it's like you'll see it for the field day, but it's like, you know, 8 to 10 feet stone fruit fully pumping these incredible fertile fields. We teed up the strawberry operation really for the last year as part of our rotation. It sort of goes milpa, market garden, cover crop, strawberry, and I can go back to that. But we planted a cover crop. We rotated chickens through the cover crop as kind of opened up the pasture, fertility, all that manure went into the fields. Some of those fields we planted another cover crop. Some of them we planted our heirloom beans over the summer where we had some open moments. We came back, cleaned everything up. We put down about 2 inches of compost, a very generous, incredible dump of compost. We kept the biology alive with water and and now we're doing the soil tests, and you're feeling the tilth of the soil and the health and the vitality. And we're looking at it saying, we're pretty good. Like there's a couple micronutrients, but in terms of major inputs, we're completely out of that game. And in terms of at a strawberry cash crop, you know, intensity, it's sort of like, it's, you know, the other side of it is very toxic and very intensive and a lot of inputs and a lot of industry. And to get to that hyper ecological at a moderate scale, you know, that's our major breadwinner on the strawberry front. So again, just this example of where the regenerative methodologies, the agroecology is all working in concert. And I want to just say one more thing, because and then I'll hand it over to Johnny if that's, you know, so I'm just trying to paint the picture.
Yep.
But you know, when we first were, you know, I have some friends, I've met Elizabeth over the last few years, but also some other friends like Michael B. and various other friends that were part of the original group here, the David Bronners, and you know, understanding, is this certification for us? You know, really thinking about that. And I was talking to some of my other mentors, and you know, it's all like you said, Benjamin, like a lot of farmers in general are moving away from certification at the family level. And I don't have to have an opinion on that, but I did feel like as an education center, it was important for us to step into this as a tool for us to teach our community and our eaters what it means to like bring the integrity to the surface and make it visible. And it's taught us something. Like we've been exploring the skinny edge of the branch on the ecological methodologies in various climates for 25 years. You know, we've learned a lot, and we've seen how you can put the pieces back together in nature. And it's a winning formula for all. But the piece that taught me the most, and I think it's teaching us all the most, which is how we can start to right size the kind of the worker compensation and the worker equity piece, which is we always want to be the best we can for the team. And we know it's a long journey. We're only 5 years in, but we are proud that we are able to pay our workers higher than what would be the normal going rate here, which was, you know, in that living wage category with the benefits, with this sort of deep relationship. We love our farmers and we love our farm team. And it feels like I learned a lot about that. Like, how do we, where are we shooting for? What's that star of like, of what health and the ecology looks like between the soil, the humans, and everything in between. And so, yeah, we're on a really good journey. And I think as that example with the strawberries, like we're getting some good feedback and the community showing up in a major way, which is we're, you know, the demand is greater than the supply. And so that'll be our next big learning curve. So that's just some of what's coming through me right now to share a big, broad spectrum of like where we are and who we are. And I know Jonathan will fill in more and Johnny as well, but thank you. And
yeah, Evan, thank you so much, and thank you for being such an incredible leader down there and also director. For any of you who get the chance to come to the field day or visit the Ecology Center separate, you'll see that there is a very beautiful self-empowerment that's taken place. Everyone at the Ecology Center, whether you meet them in the school or at the store and the chef, that you can feel the sense of pride, you can feel the sense of agency that everyone has within their sector. And that really comes to the leadership that Evan, you and others have been able to support. And so that's not easy, the social dynamics, especially when you get all these pieces moving together. It's not just a farm. You got like 6 or 7 things going on, all these different people, events and everything. And you've done a really beautiful job. So I do definitely want to acknowledge that, and also acknowledge what you said about the social component, because that is a very, later Elizabeth is going to share with us the 3 pillars, but the social one is one that isn't often recognized within agricultural production or agricultural systems. And it's the one that gets exploited the most. And so that's really beautiful that that awareness is within the certification, but also the way in which you guys are prioritizing that. So yeah, definitely appreciate everything you said, and thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thanks on that. And I appreciate the opportunities that I have, but so much of it, the success is all because we have so many incredible people, like the 2 on the call, but there's really dozens of lightning rods here.
That's right.
We're all rowing together. It's really clear that we know where we want to go.
Yeah, you know where you want to go?
We do, yeah.
Okay.
All right. I'd like to say a word too here. I want you to know, Evan, that it was a conversation you and I had that inspired the thinking to get the grant to launch this program, this pilot this year. As you said to me, Elizabeth, I don't know how do I get the farmers in my community to want to get certified? And it is a big question, and it's a like you're such a beautiful spokesperson for this. You bring tears and smiles both to me, and so thank you so much for all that you do, and just for, you know, inspiring this, because really we can thank you for a lot of this, getting this program off the ground. So thank you for that, and can't wait to hear from you, Johnny.
Yeah, lots of pats on the back. We got to give each other lots of pats on the back, massage, whatever it needs, because it's hard work. And Johnny, you're the one. Yesterday I was texting with you and you're like, yeah, I'll get back to you. I'm on the tractor right now. So want to appreciate in this time of season, taking a moment to be with us all. Yeah, farmers are super busy right now. If anyone is on this call who is a farmer, put it in the chat. Raise your hand or put something in there that you're a farmer and here for this discussion in this regard. So Johnny, yeah, thanks for give us a quick little background of who you are, but really how you're I think, as Evan said, you know, coming from the Santa Cruz area and up in Northern California, and the kind of organic, somewhat you could say was already regenerative movement because it's like ecological farming, you know, how you've seen really, you know, adjusting or applying these techniques on this farm, and then and what you're doing there. I mean, it's pretty phenomenal what's taking place underneath your feet.
Yeah, there's obviously there's lots of layers, and I know that we don't have a ton of time to get into all the things that we do, but I thought it might be useful for people just to give everybody like a brief overview about what we do and what we grow, and a little bit more detail than kind of Evan painted the kind of the big picture of our rotations. But you know, Evan mentioned that we're a 28-acre site. Of that, we're currently growing on probably about 15 to 18 of those acres. Our farm is kind of set up into two different production areas, I guess you could call them. You know, being schooled in this, as Evan mentioned, this kind of small scale kind of market garden methodologies from UC Santa Cruz. And given kind of our bioregion, when we took over the farm from the previous operator, and given the history and what's happening here in Orange County in regards to development, we thought that it was prudent to have kind of two scales of operations that would happen on the farm kind of concurrently. So we've broken out the farm into kind of a smaller 2-acre market garden, which we cultivate by hand, you know, using the BCS, kind of like the classic Elliott Coleman style, Alan Chadwick style market garden. And then the rest of the farm is kind of like more of like a broad acre tractor scale. You know, we have got, you know, a couple small tractors that we use. And Evan mentioned some of that. You guys kind of mentioned some of the fruit trees in the conversation, but all of those larger broad acre fields are divided in different alleys with different perennial tree fruits. And the idea behind that small 2-acre garden, carving that up, is how are we going to replicate high production, high diversity, economically viable operations in our bioregion. And because of Orange County and all the development that's gone on, not too many people in our area are going to have the opportunity to farm 28 acres because they're just not really, you know, there's not a lot of that left here. So we figured that that small scale production we could use as an education tool, and also to feed the farm stand with all of our fresh ingredients. Every day we grow about, I don't know, 60 different varieties in there every day for our farm stand that we sell directly. And also that's the area where we give people our apprentices the introduction to, you know, small scale regenerative market farming. And then, you know, on the broader acreage, and the main things that we grow in there are kind of, you know, fresh vegetables for the market, mainly salad mixes and, you know, arugulas and eggplants and tomatoes and cucumbers and really specialty vegetables for the market.
Nice. So it's 28 acres. How many people are on full time? And then how many apprentices, education folks do you have a season?
The farm staff. So just related to the farm, or
just related to the farm production. Yeah. Like the production of it.
I think at the height of the season, we have about 18.
18.
That includes everybody, 18 to 20. And then it kind of slims down a little bit in the wintertime. So we bring seasonal people for strawberries. But once strawberries kind of wrap up, then we let a handful of seasonal people go.
I think I asked that question because we were over, you know, on the grain production side, and it was 2 people for 500 acres. Right. And that's like grain, equipment, very low intensity. It's important for people to realize, like, market garden vegetables at this scale with a lot of handwork, it takes, you know, basically a person per acre to really make it flow, right?
I'm glad you said that, because that's pretty much our, you know, what we've landed on as our kind of labor to land ratio is about 1 person per acre. So yeah, which is, you know, then when you think about being certified, and you need to have like your labor costs, and then that goes in, and then what you're able to, it's great to see that the community is showing up to, and you have more of a demand, because then you're able to get what you need for what you are able to produce and support. Yeah. But, and then on the broad scale, you know, we grow, you know, like Evan said, it's about, you know, 12 acres divided up into 3-acre pieces with a 4-year rotation. And in that rotation, it's chicken and pasture, cut flowers. Evan mentioned the milpa, which is corn, beans, and squash, and then the strawberry. And then we also pepper in some tomatoes and peppers as well. So how many crops are you guys growing in total? Yeah. I don't know. I haven't really done an inventory. I'm actually putting together the list right now for our kind of like our crop planning. but probably like 30 different crops or 40 different crops. But within those, we've got a wide range of varieties. So there are probably over 100, 150 varieties of things on the farm.
Okay, so diversity, is like, I think Evan mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and so, but it's interesting. So that story is nice, but Evan and I are always continuing to whittle, because when we took it over, we were like, we're all on this discovery here of what goes well and what is profitable and what we like growing. And then so when we first started out, it was kind of funny. It's like I felt like we were 20 again. We were like growing everything in the Johnny Seed catalog kind of thing. And
which makes a fun wintertime like crop planting, right? You're like, whoa, what do we got? Oh, look at this.
Trees, the fruit trees were planted, and we have 5 varieties of Gold Kiss and 5 varieties of Flavor King and 5 varieties of, 5 trees of this and 5 trees of that. And it's really nice, but what we're finding, again, we had to relearn this lesson, but it's like diversity for diversity's sake isn't useful, diversity for, you can have 3 crops that rotate really, really well, like corn, bean, and squash, or you've got like a duck, you've got, an animal, a grain, and a vegetable system that is highly sustainable, highly regenerative, and also, profitable, and, isn't driving the farmer crazy trying to manage 150 different things. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, on this journey, we're 5 years in, and we're really, really refining all of the things that we're growing.
Oops, you hit your mute, Johnny.
Unmute it. I think we can unmute you if somehow it's muted.
There we go. Is that
there
good?
We go. Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. And then so, part of that, so we're finding the right varieties at the right time that fits our soil, that fits our bioregion, that fits our kind of philosophy on what we want to communicate to the community. And yeah, we're getting, like Evan said, we're, part of that journey, drives some of the profitability of the farm too. So we're getting better at a handful of things that we do, and we're digging into those things.
With being someone who's coming from a lineage of the organic, practice, I mean, coming from the UC, you went to the UC Farm and Garden program, right?
Yeah.
And then also being up in Sonoma and different things, and coming down there to that land in particular, implementing that which you knew, but in a new region, experimenting, and now kind of understanding what's working, what's not. What are some of the practices that you have found that were, you knew and just have doubled down on, and what are some that have been surprising that you recently are really excited about?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is, we're in a pretty arid climate down here. So everywhere else that I've been farming, we at least get, 30 inches of rain in the year. We're about 10 to 15.
10 inches, 15 inches.
Sometimes 8, sometimes 20. But yeah, right in that's kind of the average. And so, kind of the philosophy, or I guess there's 2 different things. Kind of the philosophy, and one of our original inspectors came down and was looking at us, and he was like, well, you guys, you don't have a lot of crops growing, underneath your trees, or I don't know if I can count this as regenerative, but we had a lot of mulch, right? And so we live in an urban environment where there's a lot of urban trees and a lot of resources available of these, of this carbon. And one of the things that we've kind of implemented here is kind of like a deep mulching system. So we save water, we put in carbon back down, but we're not actively growing, like an understory, let's say in our orchards, because, water is one of our limiting resources. Not only is it, scarce as far as rainfall, but it's also expensive for us because we're on city water. And then so the idea of kind of keeping the vegetation growing all of the time is something that we're kind of trying to balance, in the fields, but maybe in our perennial systems, we don't have, living cover crops of soil, of clover, or of other kind of things like that. But maybe the mulch, as a protector of the soil, can act in a similar way.
Right.
It's also, I mentioned the heavy clay component to our soil, which is wonderful. It holds a lot of water when it has it. But all of that carbon that we're putting down as a deep mulching system, over time is going to really help with our, infiltration and our heavy clay. So
yeah, so the concept there of like keeping the
selective with we can't just like plant a cover crop in the fall, October 15th, and be like, cool, we're good, because it doesn't, we don't get enough rain for that. And maybe our cover crop, some years we'll get, a foot, and then some years with good water, it'll get, 6 feet.
Right. So you're keeping the soil covered, that principle, keeping it covered, but sometimes it's in a mulch rather than a living mulch or a cover crop. And it's all about timing and conditions and seasonality and everything.
Yeah, and also our production. Like we are, you mentioned how many people we have, like we are always constantly balancing the equity and the economy. And then so in order to do that, and the ecology, but in order to do that, we also need to produce. So we can't always afford, honestly. Like I feel like when I was younger, I was like, honey, the farmer can't afford cover crop. What's he doing? It's like, but no, sometimes we actually need to keep it going. We need to keep producing, and we want to keep people here year round, our staff, and provide them with all of the things, and keep our farm stand stocked full of all the things that we're growing all the time. So we're constantly balancing the cover cropping versus the unproduction and all that.
As a teaser to get people to come to the field day, where we're going to get to really go into more detail on this and see how you're doing it. And I think one thing I'd like to illuminate here is how the ROC framework is practice-based, but also requires some outcomes. And in that, there's a whole array of options that you can pick from. So your way of leaving the ground covered, we don't say you must buy cover crop, you must cover crop. In your region, it doesn't make sense. And so what you're doing and how you're bringing carbon into the soil and increasing the water infiltration is through using the local resource. And so, I think that's a really neat thing to be able to demonstrate in the framework, that it's not just prescriptive, it's always going to be site specific.
Yeah, we need to train.
Say it again, sorry.
No, I just part of the conversation and just making sure the inspectors, like that, like comes down from the ROA, like that's, being regionally adaptive and site specific is the thing, it's not like this broad spectrum prescriptive, like, idea, because a farmer in, the Hudson Valley is not going to be the same for us.
Exactly. Johnny,
and it's on us to educate the auditors and the certifiers, and we have a small team, and so sometimes there's a rub there, and you all are you bear the brunt of that when the inspector, maybe we haven't been able to educate them enough. And I've noticed in our group here, we have a number of representatives from certifying agencies here in the room, so I'm really excited to see you.
Yeah, no, that's exciting, because I did run across that, one of the first, one of our first inspections, and then we ended up having like an hour discussion.
What year was that, Johnny? What year was that inspection?
I won't disclose, because then we can, identify who it might have been.
But what year? When did you guys?
No, that was 2 years ago, I think.
2 years ago. Okay.
And the concern, though, for the farmers is that you have to pay for that time, and you're also thinking like, oh my gosh, I've got to be getting ready for the strawberries, and I'm arguing about or discussing this with somebody who I'm paying. And so it is something that's on us, on the ROA, as the scheme owner. Our responsibility is to educate these people who are the only face you sometimes see.
Yeah, that's
of ROA. And so it's a really important role that the inspector plays, and it's an important role that responsibility we have as an organization to help ensure they have really good training and information to implement, because it is it's complicated, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot to it. So. And we have someone in here too, so maybe
let's open that up for the Q&A. I just want to acknowledge Johnny and Evan. I know that you guys have a lot going on today. Are you able to stay on for a little longer, or do you guys have to bounce off to get back in the field?
I'm good. I can stay a little bit longer.
Okay, because I did want to shift over to Elizabeth, and then we're going to go to Jonathan. But maybe if there's anything you particular, since you have the mic, would like to add, or if there was any specific question that others had, because I think the point you just raised about, and I know, Elizabeth, this is on your mind, as you mentioned, and if there's any farmers who are concerned about that thing, like, oh gosh, there is these techniques, how do they get implemented? How is that then transcribed? We're going to talk about how there's a third-party certifier that comes in to certify the organic part, and then what that relationship is with ROA. And it's new. We're in this new edge, and the feedback from the farmers is crucial in how that gets adjusted and adapted. But there is rigor and there is specifics to what we're trying to accomplish within Regenerative Organic Certified. So is there anything else right now? I don't know if there's any questions specific to Johnny that we want to add in, or if we want to move on to Elizabeth. You were going to start talking about some of the structure. We could also go to you kind of stay here too. It's kind of.
I have a question for Johnny.
Go for it. Yeah.
Evan was talking about the prep for the strawberries, and we're going to get to enjoy seeing those strawberries go in when we're there, having just gone in. And I'm curious, couple things. What are the cover crops? Johnny said you all used maybe 2 different sets of cover crops, and if you've changed your choice of cover crops and diversity in that cover crop mix over time. And the second thing would be when he said you prep the soil and then you layer in the compost. What is it that you're doing? Maybe you're working it in that top layer and then covering it with compost, or just curious what your actual practices are. Strawberries are the worst, in my opinion. It's the worst. It's so hard when you see all that plastic. And for people who are eating organic strawberries who don't realize that, it is growing in a bed of plastic. It's the only way commercial strawberry keeps the weeds out. And it's also the most challenging area in the standard, because we've got, all these berries coming in from hydroponic operations, not necessarily strawberries, but it is kind of similar in that sector. So yeah, I'd love to hear your method to success, John, on that.
Yeah, so I guess what we settled on is the first of the cover crop is and this is actually interesting, and we can go in this more depth on the field day. Like I have got some soil data and stuff that maybe we can go into. Yeah. But what's interesting is that we kind of put down a semi-perennial, we'll put down a semi-perennial cover down first before the chickens, and then kind of graze that for a while. And then what I found through this first set of data that we pulled off was after we pull them, whether we put a bean in after that or whether we do another cover crop after that, it's kind of important for the nitrogen accumulation. So because obviously the chickens have high nitrogen. If you're not careful, it could be too much. Yeah. And so we use like a summer, like it's a buckwheat, a Sudan, it's got a cowpea, buckwheat is in there as well. And we just kind of like do that on the bed tops, and the cover crop basically takes all of the excess nitrogen out of the ground. And then we kind of mow that off, put down our compost application, just kind of like I call it like a mulch compost we were putting down. And this is kind of, and I can just touch on that, but it's like Evan said, it's pretty thick. And one of the ways that we're able to do that is because we are in our own environment, and in this urban environment. I mentioned we have a lot of mulch at our resources because we've partnered with this great, composter. And in our region, there's not enough farms to put all of the mulch and all the compost on. So we actually have to ship mulch out of town, to be honest. And then so we have that resource available to us. So we put it on thick. And we've been working with him. We can talk more about it. He's going to be at the field day. But and then we put it on down really thick, and then we water it. We get a first flush of weeds, and then we actually use a spader. So then we spade that in and get that down. We get all the mulch and everything down about 12 to 16 inches. And then it's kind of like traditional soil prep after that. Then we'll just kind of, well, it's only actually 2 passes. Then we just water one more time, get the moisture up right, and then we just kind of make a pass with either the rototiller now, but we're going to get a harrow this season. So then we'll harrow it and then just make beds.
That's an interesting discussion we had, Evan, when I was there, because there's this concept within regenerative practices of no-till and not churning the soil, breaking up the mycelium lens and whatnot. And yet we know that as farmers and soil tenders, there's different strategic moments where tillage can be of benefit, and most often it's not of benefit. It can be really detrimental. But I'm curious how you navigate and negotiate that with your understanding, you know, of the soil biology, and you got something there.
Oh, I just wanted to show, so we can talk about this till literally the cows come home, the tillage conversation, but
Sure.
you know, our standing organic matter on our farm is 8.5%. So, and we're an intensive like tillage farm that has to do with also our clay soil. So it has a higher, you know, it's not, you know, it's, we kind of started on second base.
Yeah.
But, you know, with all of this intensive tillage, all of this intensive practices that we're doing, we still have a really, really high organic matter content on our soil. So I think
I would say one thing though, like you just said, intensive this, intensive to, it's not as intensive as the traditional, more industrial stuff that's going on, where they're disking and you know, and doing all that type of tillage. So it's like
so we just do 2 passes. We spade, and then we make a seed bed with something that's, you know, either a rototiller or harrow. We also
I think it's like the same conversation that I heard you guys talking about, which is the kind of bioregionally appropriate strategies. You know, these are all soil appropriate, crop specific. Like, I think the more we get away from the good, bad, right, and wrong, and we look towards the stewardship and the health of the ecology, then we're moving in the right direction. Because it's not serving us as farmers to have uneducated consumers saying, "Are you no-till?" And it's like, well, what do you know about tillage? Like, let's, you know, like, you know, that righteousness isn't serving the, and by and large, like an ecological operation has stewardship at the heart of it, and this is conservation tillage, like where this isn't like the moldboard plow that's inverting soils and going back to the, you know, 112 years in implementation. This is like, we're in a modern day, and so we just have, there's obviously charge in this conversation, but as vegetable farmers and as intensive medium scale market gardeners, you know, like there's really no way to do that from our opinion. And I know Johnny's close friend got his PhD in this subject matter specifically of no-till vegetable farming intensively in California, and he came to the conclusion that it's not a viable enterprise. You know, so it all just depends, right? If you want to grow a garden and you want to do this, that, and the other, if you can do it at the field scale, you can grow grains in various ways, but it depends on what you're growing and depends on where you're growing.
It all depends. I mean, Evan, I've been doing damage control on the original framework that came out about no-till since I got in this position, because everybody, like 7 years ago when the founders first started this, and they came out with this no-till, and it's not about no-till. And
that's how you get to spraying, you know, Roundup, so you can drill in your grains and call it a day and regenerative, and that's not what we're here to do.
No.
Yeah.
Totally true. And there's a lot of regenerative farmers now who do chemical termination of their cover crop. And so that's a whole different category of regenerative that we are also trying to help bring along and meet those farmers where they are and help them get off of that chemical treadmill.
Right. That's a very dynamic conversation that's happening on multiple layers, multiple platforms. And it comes down to that certification, I think, question, because farmers say, well, I want to do this, and can I do that? And if I'm certified, I can't do this, I can't do that. I think what we're seeing here, which is beautiful, is it depends on the location. It's outcome driven. The fact that you have 8% organic matter is phenomenal. And anyone who's fortunate enough and has the privilege to come to our field event will be blown away that it's a 5-year coming into its 6-year project. You look at some of these aspects of the farm, and I couldn't believe, I kept going, wait, 5 years? He's like, yeah, everything here is just 5 years. And it's the proof is in that practice, where you see the vitality, the fecundity of all of that abundance that's happening. It's something's going on right in that respect. So good points, and thank you, Johnny, for being such a amazing tender of the soil and attention. And I know it's a lot of hard work, and also to your team, because you have a whole team behind you. And so, yeah. Okay. We have a lot of people. If you have questions here, put them in the thing. Elizabeth, do you want to go into sharing now some of the, or should we, does that feel good?
I mean, it's
I got a roll, guys. Sorry, but thank you so much.
We'll see you soon.
I really look forward to seeing you guys soon.
Okay, Johnny. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.
You.
All right.
And for those that are still on the call, we do have Jonathan, who's part of the Ecology Center, who's going to be talking also a little bit and can answer any of the questions in relative aspects to the Ecology Center practices and things. But I do think it would be good, Elizabeth, if you wanted to, now that we've seen how it's been applied to the Ecology Center, see what they're doing and different things, kind of give us the larger overarching perspective of ROA and some of those metrics and pillars and whatnot.
Happy to do that. I'm going to skim past some of this because it feels to me in looking at this audience that we've got a lot of people already familiar with the work we're doing. And so I don't want to take away time from talking to Jonathan and for opening up for discussion and conversation. But
and I could also say that we've done this presentation a couple of times now with our webinars, and so people can, if they're wanting to get more details on the nuances of the background history and things that you're skimming over, you could check out those.
Yeah, well, and this one, I'll just pause here for a minute and talk about the Regenerative Organic Alliance and our theory of change, essentially how it was founded, who we were founded by, for those of you who don't know that, but it really was the vision of the Rodeo Institute, Patagonia, and Dr. Bronner's, who came together in 2017 and said, hey, we love organic, but we're a little concerned about where organic's going. And we want to keep organic strong. In fact, we want to make it stronger. We want to make it this amazing thing that will help to heal our planet and to really recover a very broken food and agricultural system. And they wanted to do this through this lens of these three pillars that I'm going to get into more detail on and outlined here, as far as like the soil health, the equity and farm worker and farmer equity, and then about animal welfare if it's a commercial livestock operation. And the vision was to do this through a very holistic, farm-based, but brand-driven certification. So not top-down, as some folks have accused early on that we were all top-down and telling farmers what to do. That is not what's happened here. Many, many stakeholders, many farmers, many soil scientists, people from Rodeo, people in the food system were at the table early on, helping contribute to the development of the standard that defined this new Regenerative Organic Certified label. And you're starting to see this label pop up. I'll show you some of our growth in just a minute. But, you know, and I don't think this is news to any of you all. Why do we need regenerative organic agriculture now around this loss of topsoil, around toxic pesticides accumulating in our own bodies and in the water and in the soil, plastic, bioplastics, all of these things, chemical agricultural runoff. All of this led to the need for regenerative organic agriculture. This statistic here about industrial ag accounting for 25, could be 30% of global carbon emissions. We're not even talking about what's going on with nitrous oxide, far more damaging than carbon, or methane from industrial animal operations. Climate change is happening at just such a fast clip. I had the privilege of being in New York City all last week for Climate Week, and I was talking every single day somewhere to an audience about how agriculture has such an incredibly important role to help stop climate change and help address. It's just such a huge solution to so many of our problems. And so I'm very hopeful after last week. There were so many people interested in learning about this. And all of you here in this room and who will be coming to our field day, hopefully, or watching this webinar, you probably already have a good idea of this kind of core concept. Healthy soil equals healthy people. Healthy food equals healthy people. And this really stems from J.I. Rodale long ago, who had this idea and moved from New York City up into the country, really pretty close by, in Pennsylvania, and started the Rodale Institute, which we can thank for bringing organic to the United States in many ways, through all their publications, through all the research, 75 years of research showing the difference of conventional compared to organic. It's the longest standing field trials to compare these methods. And I would be remiss not to say regenerative agriculture as a term was really introduced by Dr. George Washington Carver in the South, who was learning to implement regenerative practices also around these, like many years ago in like the South, where they're growing peanuts, cotton, and other crops, and learning how to use compost and do crop rotations and bringing regenerative agricultural practices. And of course, prior to that, it comes from indigenous people and millennia of indigenous cultures who have been farming in this way, stewarding the land in a way that honors and recognizing kind of inherently all those different site-specific practices that vary across this whole planet. So for these three pillars that I mentioned earlier, looking at soil health, where we begin in this regenerative movement, there's a lot of agreement across the many different new certifications for regenerative that have popped up, 5 in the last 2 years, in fact, 5 new regenerative certifications, that we all agree on some of these core principles outlined on this slide. And that is where we're going to go to minimize the disturbance of soil or conservation tillage. As you heard just a few minutes ago, it's a pretty, it can be a really fiery topic. And in the farming circles, when you start telling farmers how much they can till, and how, when Johnny was describing how they use a spade, and his tone kind of dropped, and it's almost like farmers want to not say that they're using tillage or not use tillage, but it's a really important tool. And Jeff Moyer from Rodeo Institute always liked to compare it to a hammer. You can tear a wall down, or you can build a wall up. It's just it's a judicious use of tillage, and using cover crops, keeping the soil covered, keeping vegetative cover over the soil if possible, and when not, then you use mulch like they're using down at the Ecology Center. Having a really proactive plan for crop rotations so that you're never growing the same cash crop over and over again and depleting the same nutrients from that soil. This rotational grazing concept is like really bringing animals back onto the farm. There's research that shows what happens when animals are grazing and a ruminant is grazing. There's an exchange between the soil microbiome and the saliva of those animals that actually further activates the soil microbiome. So many beautiful things that happen, not just depositing manure and churning the soil or pushing in the roots or the mulch, but also what's going on in this exchange of life. We don't allow, of course, no GMOs because we require certified organic, but also we don't allow soilless systems or hydroponics at all. There are synthetic inputs that are allowed under the organic program. We're looked at with we look at it with an even stricter approach, looking through anything on the Xerces list. We're going to give it that, we're going to approve it according to the Xerces list. How does it affect pollinators in that region, and how is it applied?
Elizabeth,
protects them.
I had a question just about the soil. Why no soilless systems? The importance of soil. You want to, because I know that that's a big critique of the organic, is like they've let hydroponics in, but for ROC, soil is a key element.
Yeah, totally. That's
why. Why is that?
Well, because we don't believe that hydroponics. I don't believe. None of us at the ROA believe that hydroponics should be allowed to make an organic claim. You're growing oftentimes in a always in a plastic container, oftentimes in like coconut fiber that's probably been imported from Sri Lanka or somewhere far away. It's a sterile growing medium, and you're using imported nutrients to feed it. And sometimes reappropriated water, and the runoff is a whole other issue from the plastic that's used in these big kind of greenhouses or hoop houses. So there's a lot of reasons we don't.
So soil health, right? Yeah, soil health is like soil, roots, plants grow in the ground.
It's like let's grow in the living crust of the earth. Those top 6 inches is how we will. And a core tenet to the Organic Food Production Act is to maintain or improve the health of the soil and cycle resources. Hydroponics, soilless systems do not address that. And so it's unfortunate that it's allowed, and it's only in the US. And, hopefully someday that'll change, and there's going to be more and more advocacy to get that out of the USDA organic. But currently it is allowed. And so, that's a really big differentiator for our program. Also promoting biodiversity, there's many practices that I won't outline here, but that where we go above and beyond National Organic Program around no deforestation, no conversion of a pristine land or wetland or peat things like this. So there's other aspects of our program that we won't go into here. This animal welfare, you know, if we had a commercial livestock operation that we were working on right now, I would go into far more detail on this, but really just looking at high welfare farming for putting animals first so that animals are free to express their natural behavior. That's really the core there. Is a ruminant wants to be on pasture, converting grass into milk or meat. And that's what those animals do. That's how their bodies are designed. Poultry, they are foraging. They need some protective cover. They evolved from the jungle. They want to be under cover of trees and scratching, foraging, pecking, and eating insects and bugs. And so yeah, just having animals be able to express their natural behavior. If somebody chooses to eat animals, that they can have their only one bad day, as our founding board member Will Harris always said. Those animals on his farm only ever have one bad day, and that is the day that they get sent to processing. And we have really strict rules around the processing, transport time, and ensuring that processing facilities would meet like a Temple Grandin style requirement. And then finally, the social fairness. And this one is you know, we could spend days talking about this for today, I think. And what we're going to see at the Ecology Center is just the incredible uplifting of their employees and the way their team operates and the way their people are brought in on decision making, capacity building, professional development, good safe working conditions, access to really amazing food, all of these things. And certainly looking at no child labor, no trafficked labor, no forced labor. Those are all central tenets to our social fairness program that are, you know, shockingly difficult to confirm here. Like here in the US and global north countries, we have over 60% of the people who pick our food are undocumented individuals. So they aren't enjoying protection under the law as most. So there's a lot to it, way more than we have time to get into here. And I don't want to take too much time away from this conversation. These are our 3 levels. We recognize bronze, silver, gold. And there are like multiple different ways throughout the Regenerative Organic Certified Framework that a farmer can show how they meet this. But you begin at bronze, and the whole idea is continuous improvement gets brought in, and you get brought up and along to these other levels. This is pretty exciting. We're at really we just broke 200 brands are licensed to bring rock products into the marketplace. They have an amazing store at the Ecology Center where they sell a lot of these rock products. We have over 15 million acres, 61,000 smallholders represented from around 250 plus farms. You can see all this data here. That SPINS data, you may not be familiar with SPINS, but they do market research, and they are looking at Regenerative Organic Certified product SKUs in the marketplace, and that 25% sales year on year, that was last year. I just learned the other day that that was around $40 million in sales last year. Have reached $170 million in sales of rock products just as of last week, I heard. So wow. Pretty tremendous growth. It's going to keep on growing because consumers are hungry for this. People want this for their own health, for the health of their community. And so, you know, I think we're just going to see continued growth. These are some of the brands you will see carrying the rock products. We have one of our right here, organically grown Gallant. Vic, please show yourself. Our dear friend Vic is here, and maybe he'll talk later about the incredible work he's doing in India to help organic cotton farmers, and a big exciting project he's about to launch. So maybe our first international Regenerative Organic Learning Center will be there in India. Who knows? That's it for me. I'm going to jump back to you and let you pass it on to Jonathan.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you, Elizabeth, for breaking that down. And Jonathan, I know that Evan and Johnny went into quite a bit of detail. I was wondering if you wanted to add anything else specifically around kind of the idea of the Ecology Center also being an aggregate. You guys just got a grant for doing some centralized processing, distribution, and whatnot. And so I was curious if you wanted to speak to that a little bit, but also anything else you want to add. I do want to notice the time and see, you know, maybe in about 5 or 10 minutes, we can open it up and hear from some of the people that are a part of this call as well. So turn it over to you, Jonathan. I'm glad to see that you're feeling better today.
I can speak to really all things community-based, and partnership and network building with farms and farmers is a big part of that. But just to reiterate what Evan said, one of the major elements of the Ecology Center that drives impact and success is farming in relationship to our community. So by being able to produce these ingredients, and obviously we're in a unique suburban environment within 50 miles of 20 million people, Los Angeles, San Diego, Orange County. So that obviously is something that is unique to us. And putting those ingredients straight out our front door, we're able to do a lot of things. One is we're able to price our produce appropriately, from a retail standpoint instead of a wholesale standpoint, which obviously creates a little bit of complexity. And really more importantly, it allows for us to build a context and understanding within that community as to why it's valuable to invest in those ingredients. And that's something that I talk about every single day. We live in a community that both has a great deal of affluence and also not. And I have conversations all the time, and for whatever reason or other, it almost always is brought up by people that are on that affluent end of the spectrum is they want to know, why would I pay $8 for a pint of regenerative organic local strawberries versus $6 or $5 for a pint of conventional or even industrial organic strawberries? And there's an opportunity for us. I love that question, by the way, because it allows for us to speak to these values that Evan and Johnny and yourself, Benjamin, and Elizabeth have been promoting, which is that we are growing ecologically, we are growing seasonally, we are growing locally, and we're growing, and really most importantly, in relationship, not just the consumer, but also the producer. So, you mention all of these things to people, and all of a sudden they get it and they understand. If you were to just say, like, all right, raise your hand if you care about farm workers, raise your hand if you care about animal welfare, raise your hand if you care about soil, most people are going to agree with just about all those things. So it's an opportunity for us. And fortunately, there is, as you all mentioned, a long legacy of people raising their hand and participating in farmers markets and in local co-ops. And now there's just a chance for us to say, okay, maybe organic is not the ceiling. Maybe it's the floor. Maybe we should all agree that spraying poison on our food is the least we should do, but it's not the most we can do. So we have an opportunity to educate people as to the fact that, growing industrial organic products in Central America and shipping them around the world in plastic, and no offense to anyone that's on this call or any farmer, because we know we never blame farmers. Farming is the hardest job in the world, but maybe that's not the best we absolutely can do. So, for us, I just lay that all down as context as to why farming in community is so important. And everything that we grow, just about, I would say well over 95% is going out our farm stand, through our cafe, into our pantry products, or through dinners. And then something that we are proud to do is that through philanthropy, as a nonprofit, we've also been able to develop a program in our farm stand in which we match all EBT purchases one-to-one. For those not in California or not in the United States, EBT, the electronics benefit transfer, is regulated through the federal government, but it's managed state by state. So ours is called CalFresh. And CalFresh essentially is a credit card that you get if you're living below the poverty line, and you can buy fresh food. And when someone with their EBT card comes into our farm stand and spends $50, we give them another $50. And that's important to me because it speaks to the challenge that we have in what we're fighting against, which is that even essentially half off produce is still potentially more expensive than Carl's Jr. And that's why, again, we need to do this work in community, because there's a holistic element of engagement and education with folks to really bring us all back to the fact that we've all come from these roots, regardless of what corner of the world we're from. We're 1 or 2 generations removed from agriculture, and most of us actually have that as a cherished part of our lineage. So it's a reminder to us all. I know we're short on time here. I could go for a few more hours, but
and you will. I think keep going. Yeah, go ahead and finish up there, Jonathan, and then we'll open it up to the
A
group.
few more hours. Here we go.
No. Just, I mean, we got a field day where you get to elaborate, and we get to taste the food. We're gonna have a lunch there. We're gonna have a dinner afterwards, potentially. We got like lots of people showing up, so it's gonna be, and there's still availability. There is we'll put it in the chat again now, so it's at the top is the Eventbrite for people who would like to join. Please let us know.
Which I do really strongly recommend. You know, the secret sauce of the Ecology Center is in the space. It's not in the ideas. So
that's right.
Being able to visit and be, I know many of you have, Benjamin and Elizabeth and Vic and various others. It is a pretty unique operation. In terms of what the community engagement looks like, to just kind of layer onto the agroecological practices, we host probably a couple dozen, if not 100, different experiential offerings on the farm every year. And then those start at festivals, anywhere from a strawberry U-Pick festival, which is a very common experience in agriculture, regardless, you know, some geographies maybe as apples and or various others, but that drives a lot of participation. I am very clear in that we don't need to swim upstream or you know, fight battles. If people want to pick strawberries with their kids, give them strawberry picking. You know, if that needs to be the gateway drug, then so be it. And it happens to be that it's a very effective one because it allows for you to have a simple conversation, which is that, oh, right, the strawberries that I bought at Costco in December were not very flavorful. Why might that be? You know, so I always like to turn on the narrative of the Ecology Center is not special, where we don't have any magic powers in growing. If you grow your own strawberries, if you grow your own tomatoes, and then you go to the store and you buy those same things, they're going to be notably different. So it's just a bit of show, not tell in that regard. We host dinners. You know, for us, the culinary offering is one of the most powerful levers that we can pull. You know, only some percentage of the population is going to have a, you know, just a built-in inherent passion and interest in agricultural practices and in soil care and you know, these like fairly deep things that we all on this call think about every single day. But as Benjamin said at the top of this call, we all eat and we all eat every day, and how we eat it plays a large part in our culture and our tradition and in our cherished memories and in our intergenerational values. So we get to use the food as another one of those gateway drugs, be it you know, really high level multi-course, you know, live fire cooked, scratch made outdoor meal on the farm on a Friday night, or a simple yet really beautiful cafe experience for breakfast or lunch that probably sources ingredients better than any restaurant in the state of California, you know, and at a price point that can be accessible to anybody, especially in a day in which burritos are $20 wherever you go. So, you know, we're pulling those levers in however we possibly can. We host, you know, education is a big part of what we do. As Evan mentioned, we have a school on site, and that's at the heart of the work, but we also host educational programs and experiences for our community members in the form of culinary classes or garden workshops. Again, just trying to raise that collective awareness to the value and importance of this work, as well as the literacy as to how to take it home. And then there's, you know, just the fun things to do, like the movie screenings and the speaker series and the book signings. You know, those are lo-fi, simple things that any of us really, in whatever way that we're in relationship to our community, can integrate to build, you know, a shared affinity for the work. I'll speak about two more things quickly. One is this commissary project that we have launched that hopefully can be an asset to any of you here, and we'll go in depth on it at the field day. But for those, especially in California and certainly Southern California, we were able to receive a grant from the USDA called OMDG. It's the Organic Market Development Grant. And what that allows for us to do is to build a value-added pantry processing commissary. And more specifically, what the USDA wanted to see through this is more bioregionally available processing facilities for specifically small-scale producers. We're kind of the poster child for this because when we first took over the farm in 2019, we had this strawberry crop and we wanted to make jam. And we looked all around, and outside of going to a commercial kitchen, which is not set up for the work that we wanted to do and processing our own jam, the only opportunity that we had to do so was in Nipomo, which was about 5 hours each way. So we're talking about a 10-hour drive to bring under 500 flats of strawberries to produce under, I don't know, 250 jars of jam. You know, and at the end of the day, you're doing the math, and there's just no way that breaks even. And of course, it was something that we were passionate about because pantry products help us tell a different story and reach a different audience and ensure that we're reducing our waste and all the things that we care about. But of course, it needs to make financial sense for all of us as farmers as well. So the problem that this solves now is that for especially small scale farmers in Southern California, we'll be able to process berries into jams or other berry products. We'll be able to process dried beans, and through color sorting technology and various other pretty expensive equipment and machinery that the USDA is paying for, and we'll be able to process corn. So we'll be able to make tortillas or a corn flour or a masa or a polenta. These are the three things, and I don't honestly know why the USDA was interested in, which was corn, grains, and beans. So that's the equipment that they covered. The long and the short of it is this will be a facility for anyone to partner in, and we're maybe a year out from the actual development of the commissary. So we have a little bit of time to design the structure of how a partnership will look, but in my mind, it'll have a few different potential paths, which is that we can simply be a co-packer. You know, if you Fallbrook Farms in North County, San Diego want your own jam, we can take your berries and we can package them and you can put your own labels on them and sell them. Or
Amazing.
you can become an aggregator, which is that if we can find other regenerative organic farms that are growing to the standards that we're all here to share, then we do have a market both through our local farm stand, and we do e-com, and the Ecology Center has a strong brand. So we can essentially buy your strawberries and make jam.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Is that there was a question, it's about the organic market development grant.
Yeah,
right? That was the one that you did. And then yeah, I put in the chat just as a big idea, because I heard this before, is that there's also, you guys are demonstrating a model that ideally could find and work out and then share with others to replicate, right? To create these bioregional hubs, aggregates, connections, so that what we can do in local food economies can be replicated in different communities throughout the state and country. I mean, I think that's kind of what I heard as far as like a open sourcing of sharing of information is kind of one of the also big ideas. Would you say that's true?
And that's my last point here, which is that the Ecology Center really wants to serve as a model for replication. And it's not to say that all farms should and would look and feel like we do. Obviously, there's a cultural and a geographic appropriate element to the work that we're doing. Not everyone's going to want to invest in cultural and artistic expression in the way in which we do. But the hope is that we can help build this movement together in partnership with ROA and various others and everyone on this call, this movement. And we can be a little bit of a driver for that, because we are very present within the consumer community, and we have strong storytelling and content creation capabilities. But what that looks like for us, and what it's been in the past and where it's going in the future, is we have designed a few satellite farms that we've literally designed, we have built, we have staffed, we have programmed, and then handed off. And in these cases, both have been in partnership with school districts. So just if I can have 3 minutes, my general thesis here is that there is actually a good deal of land available for urban and suburban market garden methodology regenerative farming. And it's probably under 5 acres most of the time. And the vast majority of these projects are on school districts, on city-owned land, and in housing developments. And these 3 different potential partners all have their very significant challenges and restrictions, and also all actually come with a great deal of benefits as well. namely, and not to, we can go into this at the field day, but one of the single greatest opportunities within these is that it shifts the model away from ownership-based agriculture, which has been the way in which we've done things for thousands of years and has had a great deal of intergenerational value, but is also not entirely the reality in 2024 and moving forward. Most of us can't afford 5 or 50 acre farms in most places of the world these days, unfortunately, especially places like Southern California. But when you shift to a more partnership and community-based methodology of agriculture, it can also come with a great deal of benefit, namely, in this particular case, with resources. To tell just a quick anecdote, I was talking to a representative from a housing developer, and I'll just say it's the largest housing developer in the country. I won't name any names. And she said to me, Jay-Z, I could care less about farms. I'm not interested. I don't like being dirty, and I don't like being outdoors. But we're building this 3,000 home project. And in the 90s, we would have put like 10 swimming pools in there and 5 clubhouses, and it would have cost us millions of dollars. And a large portion of them would have never been used. And in now, this conversation was 3 or 4 years ago, we're happy to bring more agricultural projects, community gardens, market gardens, educational gardens into these spaces because they're more affordable and they're more desirable. And that's right. I'm fine with that. I appreciate the honesty. They're going to pay for it, and not just on the front end from a development standpoint, but oftentimes they're willing to subsidize it continuously through HOAs or various others, their marketing costs. And that's a win for me, So even if these guys are jerks and I don't like them personally, I think it's cool that we're starting to see these opportunities come to life through these institutional partners. So that's one of the roles that we play here as ecological designers in helping bring these projects to life. We did one at a school district in Encinitas. We did another one at a school district in Anaheim. We're working on a new one across town in San Toronto. And that's just, ultimately, they hopefully become blueprints for replication. All of it is open source. There's no, we're happy to document, hey, this is the equipment that we bought for 2 acres. This is how we did our site design. This is the labor that we plan on throwing at this project, so on. And then the last bit that I'll mention here is there's this aspiration that we talk a lot about, which is more farmers, more farms, more food. And it's a simple mantra, and it very intentionally starts with more farmers. We live in a time, especially again in urban and suburban communities, in which agriculture is not something that a lot of people have been raised into. It's not I didn't grow up on a farm. I don't know how many of you did. So one of the gaps that we have is in this intergenerational handing down of knowledge and skills in agriculture. Fortunately, though, there's a great appetite for it. So one of the initiatives that we've launched to help solve that problem is, as was mentioned earlier by Johnny, this farm apprenticeship program, and something that we hope to continue and scale eventually. So we have a 10-month farm apprenticeship program. It is deeply interactive. It's hands-on. It's the opposite of the academic expression. It's like the Karate Kid. You're not gonna learn about sandpaper grit. You're gonna sand the floor.
That's right. That's right.
So
great analogy. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I put in the chat if people are interested in that kind of agri-hood development type thing. Urban Land Institute put together a great PDF, kind of shows best practices, and that is farm-centric housing. The biggest question that comes up is who's going to operate it? How's that going to work? And I think one of the things you're also addressing is this training program, and then how do we get the right farmers to then manage these sites ecologically and not just have it be just a showcase or a farmscape, so to speak. It's not a landscape, it's actually a production farm that then can function as a landscape, but not a landscape functioning as a farm. So there's like some really nuanced things there that are awesome. I do, just because of time, I did want to just open up there's a few questions and people could put them in there, or if anyone has something that's very specific to anyone here that they want answered, you could unmute yourself and ask or raise your hand. And then also we do have a LinkedIn page for this webinar that you could continue the conversation. And there's a bunch of conversations here that I think we'll reach out to you all to answer some if we don't get to it. But just wanted to put it out there. If anyone on the call would like to raise their hand or
Benjamin, I'll preface it with a caveat, which is that I'm a generalist in the world of the Ecology Center, but highly technical soil pH questions ultimately need to go to Johnny. So I'll do my very best, but I have soft hands and need to ultimately share some of the love with.
And we got the last, we got some different people here, like you mentioned, Elizabeth, Vic, and Meredith and stuff that are part of the movement. Meredith, you had your hand up, so if you wanted to, go ahead.
Thank you so much. This is so an amazing program. I work very closely with our ROC manager here at QC at Quality Certification Services. So I really appreciate all of this. My question vis-a-vis getting more farmers is what the status, or is there any information about potential cost share for getting folks regenerative organic certified? I know there was at one point. Obviously that is a dollars and cents conversation, but it is a huge piece, especially for small and mid-sized farmers, especially for farmers not in the global north. Kind of what the status of that is. So thank you so much. And I would love to have more information about that, as well as inspector training, but that's a whole other topic of conversation. Thank you.
I can touch on that cost share one. So early on, I came up with we're going to do cost share and we're going to give the money back to the farmers. And I had a board member very wisely counsel me hey, Elizabeth, you're a little under-resourced and the organization's growing like crazy and you need more staff. How can you be giving the money away when you don't even have any to give? Which is a really fair question. And so we stopped doing that. We do have a program where we will waive the fee for farmers who serve in certain roles. They feed a community, like a food desert. They're an educational facility, or bringing back previously disadvantaged farmers to the land. So we do award we'll waive the annual fee. But I will say we also at the same time adjusted our annual fee for farmers is $250 if you sell under $1 million a year. And so for that, I mean, we are giving it away because it costs us far more than that. And what it does cost the farmers that they need to pay for is to the certifier. And it's why we work with great certifiers like you who do the NOP certification. And the idea is you bundle it and you add on the rock audit so that it makes it more efficient. And there's lots of ways we'd like to address it. But the other thing that we do is we have a buyer's criteria. And the brands that you saw that I shared on that slide, they all promise to pay a premium. And they promise to do long-term contracts to support their farmers. And that's and they promise to be transparent and open their books. And so those are ways that we're trying to change our systems. We're growing wildly and we're going to keep growing, and we're going to get on a development person who really knows how to go get money. And we're going to do a lot of these things as we keep growing up. One other thing is that these great farmers who have to go and pay to show how great they are the ones put at a disadvantage by our farming policies and our systems from our government. And so I'm going to drop a link in here, and I hope you all grab this and read it, where the USDA was funding this private thing to expose anybody who's a critic of our food system. This is funded by the pesticide industry. So we have government policies that are dictated to us by Monsanto and Syngenta and by whatever, all these big chemical ag are dictating our governmental policies and where my and your taxpaying dollars go. And so those are where we need to make some noise and make it heard, that we want to see healthy food systems and healthy food access for all.
That's great. That's great. I'll put that link. I'll put some of these links too in the chat of the online forum that we got going. Indy, I see Indy Singh. You have your hand up for another call. We got a couple, just another minute. As I say on Democracy Now, 1 minute.
Okay, I gotta talk really fast. No. So, all right, you guys got the question? All right. So actually, I'm curious. Last night I hosted a candidate forum here in Contra Costa, and we had a couple of people running for a supervisor, state assembly, local politicians. I mean, we brought the supervisors in too. And we actually brought up food security, and the EB people running for EB Mud were also there. And it was I'm curious if I noticed that when we brought up the food security and food, it was really amazing to see the EB Mud people like leaning in, like, oh, we can like use the wastewater in this way to grow food and blah, blah, blah. And it was, I'm curious how we can leverage the candidacies that are happening the next month to invite these people onto, whether it's the Ecology Center or a farm, whatever farms are, to invite them in to actually lean into creating opportunities when they do get elected, whoever gets elected, to be able to generate more and even support this organic alliance as well. I mean, it's kind of, how can that, because the supervisors are really big on like, we do want to make sure that there's no pesticides and stuff on the foods and everything. So it was like, okay, here's an organization that's, you know, making sure. So I'm curious how we can leverage this election season at a local level, because I noticed it for me.
Yeah, great question. Great question. I think there's definitely some resources online and different links. I know there's some resources on the ROA page, but I don't know, Elizabeth, I know you sometimes have gotten criticized for being political. We all get criticized for being political at times, but we are living in a political time, and we do have to advocate and be advocates of this type of work. So I'm curious if you or anyone else has strategies on or resources on how to help leverage this moment, this very pivotal moment where we are politically as we're coming into this election. And we want to be acknowledge that farmers are very dynamic in their spectrum, and that they might have soil health and regenerative as a practice, but be on a whole other side of the fence in a whole different field politically. And so what are the ways that we can create more belonging than othering, so to speak?
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's the Kiss the Ground folks have their Regenerate America. They were advocating for change for the next farm bill. That farm bill is going to be a really important piece of like that will affect how we handle everything in that relating to where our money goes to support what kind of farming. So there's that. There's the National Organic Coalition. There's the Young Farmers. Like they do policy work. I dabble. I stick a toe in here and there. Really, I try and stay in my lane and do this work, but we're not a policy organization. So yeah, looking for those. CCOF has an amazing policy director, Rebecca Weber, super knowledgeable on these topics.
Okay.
Yeah.
So looking at people like CCOF and some of these other Organic Trade Alliance, even Regenerative Organic Alliance, there's different resources they have, and even some staff that might be dedicated towards this type of lobbying, really, so to speak.
We don't have any policy people.
Not ROA, but CCOF, you were saying has.
Yeah, no, CCF for sure, National Organic Coalition, NOC, that's what they do. So those would be good ones to check into for sure.
Great. I might even add the value and importance of some old school, communication tactics, lobbying, whatever it might be. I know for a fact, because one of our board members is involved at the DC level with various different administrations, that the Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack, is familiar with regenerative practices and on board with the aspiration that we all ascribe to. And I think, every once in a while, just whatever it might be, an email, a phone call, a tweet, whatever, over to the department reminds them, hey, we have hardworking farmers in this country that, historically have represented all parties alike and have been the backbone of the United States. And we need help here. And maybe we don't need to subsidize corn and soy that are never going to be grown for human consumption. Is my 2 cents.
That's right.
Good.
No, it's so true. And I've heard Tom Vilsack say, I have 2 kids. I love them equally well. Very different, like the organic and then the conventional. And I think that was a pretty strong statement coming from a Secretary of Agriculture. We have a Secretary of Ag for the state of California who leans more towards like a broader spectrum for regenerative and more like all that work that was done by the CDFA working group on defining regenerative. 90% of the calls and comments that came in were in support of organic, yet we couldn't get that in the final definition. It was so hard. And it made me really see up close, like the powers kind of there of conventional agriculture, and the power of this mainstream idea of chemical agriculture is still very dominant.
That's right. That's right. Great. I know we're at time now, but I'm cool to stay on for a minute more, and there's some other discussions that want to come. I do know that we do want to like always end with just an acknowledgement, but if there is some burning questions or anyone wants to stay on for a minute more, I'm happy to answer those if I can. But again, the field day at the Ecology Center is October 28th. It's on a Monday, and it's from 9 to 4. We're going to have food and gathering and lots of people present. So again, I want to thank everyone that presented today and everyone that showed up today. We're down to the last 22 standing here, and thank you all for staying on for the end of the call. And if there's anything you want to end in closing, Jonathan, Elizabeth, Elena, or Alanya, or Haley.
Hope to see you all down there. And thanks to you, Benjamin, Alanya, Haley, for really shepherding this whole program through. Y'all have done such great work bringing it to life. And thank to all of you who spent time with us today. It's really engaging, and all the great questions and conversations. And I'm just like clearly a fangirl of the Ecology Center folks, and hope all of you, maybe you won't see us there on October 28th, but I sure hope you all can get there someday, because it's a really, it's a real treat.
Yeah, and if people do want to put their video on or unmute themselves, I'll say goodbye in that regard, and then I will stay on if anyone has any other questions. But you can unmute everyone who's there.
There we go.
It's good to see, you know.
Bye. Thank you.
What's your usual call to goodbye, Benjamin?
Oh, we just say like, let's do it. Let's make it happen. And we just kind of do a big, yeah. Yeah. So thank you all.
Bye.
Yes. All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Adios. Thank you.